everyone, it's Mangino. Welcome to the Mangino Talks Pittsburgh podcast. We talk about everything that matters to us all, from current events to Pittsburgh history, social issues to sports, politics, to practical day-to-day life. A friend of mine and a frequent guest to my radio show, and he's been on my podcast as well, Dr. Rueben, I discovered through the assistance of my wife, Martina, that Dr. Brock nabbed himself a Tesla, which is pretty cool. I mean, you see these more and more all over the place. It seems as though every time I'm on the Parkway West, I see at least a couple of them. And then she says, wait a second, not only did he get himself a Tesla, he decided to go on a road trip, and not just over to like Gettysburg or something or up to Erie. He went all the way to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in a Tesla. And I thought, wait a second. This is something that gets talked a lot about, that, oh, fine, you can do the quick little road trip back and forth, maybe the commute to work. You go in for a half an hour, you come back home, you put it on a charger, but you really can't go anywhere because of the limits, the confines, the issues of finding charging stations. Well, let's bring Dr. Brock on and hear his story about how he got to the point of wanting a Tesla and then making this road trip down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Dr. Brock, welcome to Mangino Talks. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'm always glad to talk to you.
Okay, and this time we're not talking about children's mental health issues, although we may get to them because maybe a couple of your kids had anxiety about the idea of running out of battery life on the way down. But let's back up if we could. The idea of buying an all-electric car. Help us understand your thought process to get to the point of saying, yes, I'm in on electric, and then your decision to go with a Tesla.
Yeah. So for the last couple years, I'd been really wanting to explore the idea of getting away from gasoline. I'm relatively conscious of, the environment and what we do to it. And I think that it would be a good idea if we all migrated towards something other than fossil fuels. So I've just been kind of thinking about the possibility of that, and really hearing exactly all the things that you've been mentioning, that it's not feasible for people who drive a lot, or it's not feasible for long trips. And so I'd been really hesitant to do it because I was afraid. I kept hearing all these horror stories about people being stranded on the side of the road. But over the last year, I would say, I've met a few people who said, listen, it's not at all what you think. The technology has caught up. The networks have caught up. And it's a breeze now. And so I knew the family was coming up on this trip to Myrtle Beach. And me being the analytical person that I am, I said, you know what? It all sort of came together at the same time. My lease on my last car was up. We had this trip coming. I thought, you know what? This is perfect timing. I need a car anyway. I'm going to get an electric car and I'm going to take it on this trip and just see what happens. And so that's really what it was, all this kind of confluence of all these different things coming together at once that inspired me to go ahead and get an electric car. And really the Tesla decision was about my concerns. It was about, several companies have started to make electric cars, and there are some brand new electric cars that have come out within the last year. But I really wanted to know that the company I went with had been doing it a little while. Mm-hmm. And so I went with Tesla because they just have the experience.
Now, it's one thing to resolve within your own mind that you're going to do something like this. It's really an adventure you decided to go on. It's not just the idea of going to Myrtle Beach and the whole family and the wife can get excited about going to the beach and spending a week and all of that, but you brought in a component of adventure. How difficult was it to convince your wife that, yes, this is an adventure worth taking? You can trust me, baby. I've got you on this one.
It was not easy. That was not easy at all. And in fact, there were a lot of conversations about, well, what happens if, we took some precautions. So we got a portable charger that runs on, you can plug it into any wall. So we figured worst comes to worst, we'll stop at a motel somewhere and find a way to plug in this car if it runs out of battery. But that was a real real concern because everyone kept saying, when you get out into the middle of the country somewhere, you're going to be sorry. And so we were very much thinking about what will happen if we can't find a charge. So that was a real discussion. We talked about it for weeks. I did a lot of research.
Now, this portable charger, what are you talking about? An ability of plugging this into maybe like the wall outlet in a hotel room,
Yes.
and then running an extension cord out the window, down 4 flights and then out to the car? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so with any electric car, there are different levels of charging that you can do. And the basic level of charging is really no different than plugging in, your refrigerator. It's like any other appliance. It can plug into a 110 outlet, a regular wall outlet. It would give you a very, very slow charge. And so you'd get, when charging a car, you're going to get enough juice to get to the next charging station basically. But it gives people, I think, a little bit of peace of mind. At least that's what it was for us. We put that charger in the trunk and we thought if we ever need it, we'll pull it out. And we never pulled it out. So that tells you how the trip went. But we at least knew that theoretically, as long as we could get to some power, we would be able to get a little bit of a charge.
See, I can see Martinez saying, okay, listen, we need to have that little adapter that Dr. Brock's talking about and a portable Honda generator.
Yes.
If you do that, then we're in. We're going together.
Right. And honestly, that's the way a lot of people talked about it. It was like, you're really throwing caution to the wind by doing this. When I posted that I was leaving on this trip in a Tesla, and there were literally people saying, don't do it. It's dangerous. And so I really do believe that a lot of people are in that same boat where they would be leery of going anywhere outside of just kind of like the basic commute in an electric car.
How old are the children that you took with you? So
my son, who's home from college, he's 18, and baby Ella turned 4 on the trip. So on the way down there, she was only 3.
And she looked adorable in the pictures that you posted of her on the beach too. She just absolutely having a wonderful time playing in the sand. Now,
she had a ball.
What did your 18-year-old think? Was he like really confident this could work, or was he up for the adventure?
No, he was the one actually who was sold even before I was. Oh. He loved Teslas. He's young. He thinks Tesla's cool, and so he has said for a while that he has wanted a Tesla. But I think that speaks volumes about the younger generation. They're just kind of ready for a change. They're ready to make those switches. But also, it speaks to how when you're young, you don't even think about what would happen if the family stranded on the side of the road.
Right.
He doesn't care about that part. So that was for my wife and I.
And besides, at 18 years old, hey, that could be really cool.
Yeah, he would have had a fun story. He didn't mind at all.
Right. I could see him doing like a Facebook Live post. Here we are, stranded on the side of the road. Let me see how many likes I can get on this thing. So
exactly.
You start the trip, and what's it like on the way down? How long of a trip is this typically, and how did you figure out and determine what route you were going to take?
Yeah, so the cool thing about this experience that I learned very, very quickly is that at least in a Tesla, I only have this experience, but at least in a Tesla, the car really does the entire planning process for you. So when you get in the car, theoretically, going anywhere, really what they would suggest, what I think Tesla would suggest is you tell the car where you mean to go. And the car calculates for you, do you have enough battery to get there? If not, here's when you'll stop. Here's how low your battery will be when you stop. Here's how long it'll take you to charge back up and get back on the road. And here's how long the whole journey will take. It really, wow. I tell people, the Tesla technology makes it so that it's sort of like having, if you've ever watched the Marvel movies with Iron Man in them, Tony Stark, Iron Man, has Jarvis. He has this computer that at all times is kind of calculating everything around him, figuring things out for him. A Tesla works very, very similar to that in the sense that while you're driving, you're getting satellite views of everything around you. You're getting information about, at the next charging station, there's food, there's gas, there's a hotel nearby. There are all these things, all these factors, so that you theoretically have a lot of information to make decisions about, but you don't actually need to be making decisions about when to charge, how much battery you have, because the computer is designed to calculate that for you. And in fact, there were times when we decided that we would stay a little longer at the charge station because we had a 3-year-old with us, and so sometimes she just needs to stretch her legs, and the car would tell us, hey, you don't have to be sitting here anymore. You have enough charge. Just keep going. And it was amazing to me to realize the computer was telling us, no, keep going. You don't need to charge anymore, because you don't sit there and charge from 0 to 100%. That's not at all what happens. What happens is your battery gets a little low, and the computer realizes we won't make it to the next stop. So you stop and you charge enough to get to the next stop. And the goal really seems to be, let's get you to your destination. So we really never had to stop anywhere longer than maybe 20 minutes.
Wow. That's a really interesting point, because so oftentimes we think that we have to do the calculation, and we do with gasoline, don't we? If we're going on a really long road trip, we kind of know how far we can get on a gallon of gas and how many gallons we have left. Not even how many gallons, but we have a quarter, we have a half, we have a third of the tank or whatever. Right. But you're telling me that it's all done for you, and so you know exactly how long you have to charge. And does it give you a map of where to go to next and what route to ultimately take in order to get you to the next charging station?
Yes. So the computer figures out for you beforehand all the factors that it can figure out. So there are certain things that it doesn't know, like, for example, that there will be an accident 3 hours from now. It doesn't know that. But it will tell you, if all things go as planned, you'll have about 15% battery left when you reach this gas station / charging station. You're going to charge up for 20 minutes. That'll put you at about 80%. You'll be fine. Keep going. And then the next stop is going to be 2 hours after that. And it really plans out the entire trip. And what's interesting is there were times when, user error. I'm old. I'm my old ways. There are times when, if I'm using Google Maps, I'll say, I don't care that the map says to go this way. I know I can go this way because I like that way better. Well, when you do that in a Tesla, the computer immediately recalculates your battery percentages and tells you, hey, listen, if you do that, you're likely to run out of battery here. And I'm being facetious by saying it speaks to me that way, but it gives you this message. When you get to the next stop, you'll actually be at negative battery. Because once I said to myself, in a gas-powered car, I would pass a gas station if I felt like it, because I know how far I can get on my tank of gas. Mm-hmm. But I thought, what if I went past this charging station, even though the car is telling me that I need to charge right now? And it'll flat out tell you, you won't make it to your next destination. Your next destination, you'd be at negative 20% battery. So, now you realize, I'll be on the side of the road if I don't listen. Right. And that was one of the things that I really got from Tesla owners. When I stopped at Tesla stations to charge, there's an interesting little subculture among Tesla owners, I think, where they talk to each other. And I would get text messages, and when I would stop, I would speak to people. They would tell me their tips and tricks on how to get the most out of this experience. And the one thing I kept hearing is, listen to the computer. The computer knows what it's doing. Interesting. In fact, on the way home, we went there for a dance competition. And so there was a whole dance team that everybody was on the road roughly at the same time. And we started seeing messages about traffic somewhere on the route. And, I guess it was an accident or something. But what I noticed was my Tesla changed our route before we ever saw any of those Facebook posts. So the computer saw the satellite imagery, understood there's traffic here, and rerouted us. So we never actually reached the part that was most affected by the traffic. And that was all done intuitively by the computer. I never, I didn't have to do anything. And if we didn't know that other people had been stuck in it, we wouldn't even know that we would have missed traffic. We just knew that our route had been changed and we didn't know why. Because you can see it on the computer. And so it really is, it takes the guesswork away. And there was one moment on the trip, on the way down to Myrtle Beach, we reached this, I don't know where we were. It was probably North Carolina, I believe, where we were in this kind of like, one horse town, so to speak, where it was just nothing. There was nothing there. You could tell this town was just really dead. And I thought to myself, if I were living in this town, I would be afraid to have this car. And just out of curiosity, I kind of changed the parameters in the computer and asked, where's the nearest charging station? And the nearest charging station in that moment was like 17 miles away. So when you think about that, even when you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, you're still only, 15 to 20 minutes away from a charging station. That says a lot.
Right. I'm going to guess that the missus loved the fact that the computer was telling you how to drive. Because I can just imagine, I haven't even met her, but I can imagine her right now giving you the look and then saying, you're going to listen to the car now, aren't you? You may not listen to me, but you're going to listen to the car, because not only will you be on the side of the road, you will be on the couch too.
Right. And that's exactly right. Because when it's me and my own devices, I can choose when to stop, when to not stop, when to ignore what the car is telling me. Because if you have a car made in the last 10 years, your car tells you whenever you need gas, your car tells you when there's an engine issue, all kinds of things. But most of us ignore them because we think we know better.
Right.
I think one of the things that was most striking about this experience of having a Tesla is realizing these computers are so advanced, you no longer have a logical way of saying you believe you know better than this computer. Because once you understand what it's doing, it's really calculating everything for you so that you don't get stuck. So it's like, if you're not listening to that computer, you're a fool.
There you go. And you don't want your wife thinking you're a fool. Do not want that.
That's exactly
not
right.
on vacation. I mean, it may be during the week otherwise, but not while you're on vacation. Now, did you
not
choose
on the way to the beach?
No. Did you choose your hotel based upon electric charging stations at the hotel?
No. Now that's an interesting question. I didn't, because we booked our room a year ago, and I bought this Tesla a month ago. So I didn't even know that we were going to have a Tesla on this trip. It was not in the original plan. And so I was actually a little bummed that there wasn't a charging station at my hotel when we were there. But what was really nice was the dance competition was at a Hilton, and the Hilton had a charging station. So I charged for free every day while we were there.
Look at you.
I think, yeah. And that was, so I think the first day I was going to superchargers, and then I realized, wait a minute, the Hilton has a charge station. And so I stopped, because you're going to go to a charge station, you're going to pay $15, $20 maybe to charge. And that was no problem. It doesn't take very long at all. You're going to be there for a half an hour. But once I realized the Hilton had a lot of hotels, once I started looking for it, I realized lots and lots of the hotels in the area have their own charger, and most places don't charge for it. So you're getting a free charge. And so it's similar to what you would have at your house.
Nice.
If you have the ability to put a wall charger in your house.
Okay. Now, the drive back home, any difference in the mindset or anything with you and the family driving back from Myrtle Beach in the Tesla as compared to going down?
Yes. So the drive home was actually a much better experience. And the reason for that was, so we were towing a bike on the way up, or on the way down. When we were on the way to Myrtle, we were towing my bike. And what I learned is that the bike negate some of the autopilot features of a Tesla because they can't see all the way around the car. And one of the big draws of a Tesla is that it can do autopilot. So on the way home, I asked a buddy of mine for a favor. He had a U-Haul. I put my bike in the U-Haul, and I would say the ride home, the car did 75% of the driving. It literally will drive for you,
Wow.
which is a complete game changer in terms of a long trip with respect to fatigue. I mean, it was ultimately a 12-hour drive, and think about having the car do 75% of that. It just changes everything.
Now that you've gone electric, can you ever see yourself going back to a gas vehicle?
No way. Yeah, once you do it, once you spend a little time in an electric car, you realize how intuitively it works, particularly with the Tesla computer system, and not only that, but recognizing that your fueling no longer costs what it. I'm driving high-end cars that take high-end gas. It's $80-$90 for me to fill up my gas tank. Now, at the worst of situations, I'm going to be spending $20 to charge up. But most of the time, I'll be charging at home, which means it's going to be the same as running my refrigerator. You don't think about how much that costs.
Right.
Not to mention, it doesn't cost much. So it's like, yeah, once you experience that, it's hard for me to think about going back. I'm old school, so I want an old Corvette as a fun thing to drive on Sunday afternoons, taking my wife to dinner. But I can't imagine my everyday car being a gas car ever again.
It's all about the electric now for Dr. Rueben Brock. Doc, I am glad you had a great time in Myrtle Beach. I'm glad that you were able to survive the trip in an all-electric car and make it back safely. I mean,
yes.
and so thank you so much for sharing the story about this, because there are a lot of people, all joking aside, there are a lot of people who genuinely believe, and it seems as though it's completely misinformed, that you cannot have an all-electric vehicle and enjoy long road trips. Could you see yourself maybe comfortably driving as far as Florida? Or I know families that like going out to the West Coast, Colorado, Vegas, California. Could you see yourself more readily willing to do a trip or able to do a trip when you factor in the ability for it to map itself out, the self-driving features, and the reduction of the fatigue that you talked about?
Right.
Could you see yourself doing trips like that?
What I would say is I would have been hesitant in my favorite gas car. I mean, if you give me the most beautiful gas car you can find, an S550 Mercedes, the smoothest ride ever, I would be hesitant to drive from Pittsburgh to California because of the fatigue factor. But it just simply isn't the same. I would do that trip tomorrow in a Tesla simply because of the fact that the car does most of the driving and all of the thinking.
No. Dr. Rueben Brock. Doctor, thank you very much for your time on this. Do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good one.
You too. Thank you for listening to the show. Please be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. For more on me and the show, be sure to visit ManginoTalks.com. If there's a topic that you would like me to talk about or a guest that you would like me to have on, send me an email, Mangino@ManginoTalks.com. Follow me on your favorite social media platform by using @ManginoTalks. And then once you find me, please like, follow, subscribe, and share the pages with your friends and your family. And thanks again for listening to the Mangino Talks podcast.
I've been trying hard to reach you 'cause I don't